share stories of building a business from scratch. If you are an entrepreneur, you want to start a passion project, or you're looking for the motivation to show up and build the life of your dreams, this podcast is for you. Michael Littig, welcome to the SHOWUP podcast today.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, we got some exciting stuff going on right now, and I know that you're excited to talk about those things, and because of the relationship you have with this our guest today, I know you're really excited about this hour podcast today.
Yeah, so the guest that we brought on is a friend of mine. He's also been I've been a student of his for the past 2 years. He's an incredible leader, and most importantly, he's a relationship coach. And so for someone like me who is single, obviously, I'm sure there are many other listeners out there. I think you're gonna...
Wait, Michael, this isn't going to be good for his business if you say you're single and that he's a relationship coach.
No, he's never been my relationship coach. He's been my other coaches in many other forms, which we'll talk about. But friends, welcome Pablo Rosario. Hello, Pablo.
Hello, Michael. Hello, Brian. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited, super honored to be here, and I've been looking forward to this all week. And so thank you, guys. Very excited for this.
Pablo, I know where you are, but tell the crowd here where you're calling in from today. Where are you joining us from today?
So I'm calling from sunny Los Angeles. So I understand in some parts of the country, you may not be experiencing the same kind of weather I'm having currently, so I apologize ahead of time.
Actually, here in New York, it's pretty nice, but we finally got a nice day. Yeah, we're so excited to have you on. And so, Pablo, okay, I know where you and Michael's relationship started. We'll get to that in a second. But very quickly, because, Michael said in the intro, he's like, you're a relationship coach. Could you get a little more specific on that? Tell us the kind of people you work with and what it is that you're doing for so many people right now.
Yes. And so when I typically meet people, I introduce myself as a dating and relationship coach because that is the quickest way for them to understand what it is I do. But what I like to think that I do is essentially I free people. That's the way it works in my mind. And what I mean by freeing people is that, especially when it comes to dating and relationships, there are these things, these beliefs that these ways and perceptions of the world that cage us in and stops us from living the life that we want, showing up how we want to show up, and experiencing the things we want to experience. And so essentially what I do is help people free themselves from that and show them that they've always had the key all along to do it. And my job essentially is, in a nutshell, is not to turn the key for you, but to show you that you had it all along and to encourage you to make that turn, step out of that cage.
Yeah, and Michael knows I'm just like taking over right now because I love you so much, and like I became obsessed with you after getting to finally meet you after all these years. And what was it that, I don't want to go that far back. Why are you interested so heavily in working in this field? Like why is this your why? Why is this your passion? Like why this? Why does it matter to you?
Funny enough, I'm glad you asked that question because I did an exercise to get down to my deepest why. And the short version is that I love you. Like, have you ever had love for someone else that you really want the best for them, that you really want the world for them? And my why came from something a long time ago, but I've been in that place of that feeling of regret, of feeling alone, of feeling that I have untapped potential, of wanting to connect with people and not being able to. And so I know what that feels like, and it breaks my heart to see other people walking around living the same way when they can do it. And I see just all the things that they're missing out because of that. And so like that vision is that what drives me to do this, and especially in dating and relationships, because everybody wants to feel loved. I mean, that's the human existence in a nutshell, to find someone to experience this thing called life with. And I want to help people do that.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about you so much, you're so genuine, and it really connected to me. Most, if not all, of your clients you work with are men. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And I think that's really interesting because when we first met you, I really appreciated I don't know if soft is the right word, but the kind of the not bro-y, overly masculine approach that you take. And I find this very deep, soulful approach that you're taking to these conversations that it makes me feel more at ease. And I would be, if I were single, I would be your clientele, right? I'm a man. And I love that because I think oftentimes I could have a hang up if I thought like, oh, who's this man telling other men how they should run their lives? But I really appreciate the way you're going about the questions. And so how did you develop the style and the persona that you coach with, the business that you have?
So it was developed over time. It was developed over time and studying masters, people that I study under, people like Neil Strauss and also Ryan Schwab, who is this great trauma therapist who actually works with senators, seeing how they work. And my philosophy came from also my experience, and in that nobody wants to be preached to. No one wants to say, do this, do this, do this. That doesn't help. You know, what I came to find was that if you take the approach of I'm having a conversation with you, I'm figuring this out with you. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to even tell you what to do. I'm here to help you get where you need to go. And under the surface of the bro-y, stereotypical, masculine, you gotta be tough all the time, I know the truth. I know the truth because that is a facade. That's a facade we've been taught that we've been taught to put out to the world. But as Michael, I'm sure, can tell you that underneath that, men, we're softies in a sense. We're softies in the sense that we are secretly looking for the opportunity to break down, to say how we really feel, to say, I don't feel strong today. I'm not confident today. I don't know how to do this. Those are like some of our internal secrets. And I know that. And I don't come out and say it, but through the way I have my conversations to let them know, like, hey, listen, you're not alone. I know what you're feeling. And more importantly, it's okay. That's the big thing right there.
You know what I love about Pablo is, I'm going to speak about you for a moment, Pablo, is, I've witnessed Pablo transform hundreds of lives over the past 2 years. And I've seen people literally transform physically, mentally, emotionally. And it's largely to do with what Pablo's talking about, which is really looking deeply into the behaviors that make who we are and what we do in the world. And so, first of all, I just want to admire Pablo for his integrity. Second, I want to really narrow down into this, Pablo, because I think it's really powerful, is I want the listener, whether they're female or male, to really have a deep understanding of what are some ways people go about looking for relationships. And I know you've spoken a lot on some podcasts for women, particularly for relationship building. And how does it differ from male to female? And so let's start to go into that route and see what we can open up. Yes.
And so at the end of the day, when it comes to dating and relationships, the principles for men and women are essentially the same. The principles of human interaction, human attraction, and human relationships. They're essentially the same. The difference is just in the minute details in terms of letting someone lead, getting permission, give someone the opportunity to take the lead. And so, lost my train of thought there, but no, don't worry, I'm back. And so, when I'm talking about these principles, for example, it's one thing is, you become the best version of yourself to show up. Now, across the board, whether you're a man or a woman, the most attractive thing you can bring to the table is yourself. Now, it's not your career, it's not money, it's not even your accomplishments or anything like that, but you as a person, that's the most attractive thing that you can bring to the table. And that starts with doing work on yourself. And more importantly, here's a big secret. While a lot of the world will tell you it's about self-improvement, it's actually about self-acceptance. The more you can accept yourself, the better you show up in the world. Because we have these internal struggles, men and women, we have these internal struggles that we're fighting against. And those internal struggles manifest themselves in ways that don't really serve us. And so that's why some men, they come off as overly confident and arrogant. Maybe women, on the other hand, they may come off as maybe standoffish, or maybe to compensate, maybe they come off as super aggressive when maybe that's not them. And it's in their head thinking, okay, this part of me, it's not right. So therefore, I have to do this to fix it and show up that way. And that's men and women alike. And so the differences where they come into play, well, actually, before I get into the differences, let me get back to self-acceptance. The importance and the beauty behind that is once you understand all parts of yourself and you accept all parts of yourself, then you unconsciously give the other person permission to do the same. That's what happens when you hear the compliment, you know what, I just feel so comfortable around you. I've never told anyone this before. I feel like I can just be myself. When you hear that, that's a reflection of you, of what you're bringing to the table. And that, creating that space of self-acceptance and comfort and safety is probably one of the best gifts, one of the sexiest things, and one of the most romantic things you can give to another person.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, that is the secret right there. Literally, like I've been saying to Brian, like the reason I've been able to grow as a human is because I've been in rooms with you particularly where we're not focusing on all the skills that we can get, we're focusing on accepting ourselves. So I want to like dial into that.
Yeah.
Give me an example of someone you've worked with where they came into you and they said, Pablo, I need to like change the way I dress, I need to change this, I need to self-improve, right? Mm-hmm. People do this all the time with business. They think, oh, if I just get the next $1 million, then someone will accept me, mm-hmm. right? So like talk to me about someone who came in wanting to improve, and then you actually got them to accept something about themselves. And what was it that you got them to accept?
I'll even take it just a slight step further and give you an example where I was working with multiple people at the same time, though they had individual acceptance challenges. I had a night out. Guys flew in to visit me in LA a couple months ago. I took them out and I worked with them all together as a group, but one-on-one. And at the end of it, I gave everyone a breakdown and also during it. And so I had one person who is really analytical and he's really in his head and really has to understand a structure before he continues. Now, in his mind, his analytical nature, he thought was a hindrance. He thought that, oh, I'm too much in my head. I'm not, stereotypically smooth or anything like that. I told him, and then I had another person who was very good with words, but he couldn't emotionally connect. He said, that's just not my strength. That's just not my strength. And so essentially what I told both of them in a nutshell is that they're looking at it from the wrong perspective, or rather the perspective that doesn't best serve them. The guy who was super analytical, I told him that that's actually his superpower, to be able to think 10 steps ahead. The average person cannot think like that. And so that's actually a strength. And not only that, there are people that find that highly attractive. There's a term for that. It's called being sapiosexual, being attracted to intelligence. And he did not know that word existed. So I told him, your mind is the equivalent of a six-pack to some people. and to the other guy who wasn't able to emotionally connect, he thought he wasn't able to, but after talking with him, I helped him realize that, listen, it's not that you're not able to connect. It's that you're a rock, that you're stable. And that stableness, that rockness is an emotion. So therefore, you are able to feel emotion. And so what it all boils down to is typically people see these qualities about them, the good and the bad, as good and bad, instead of part of a whole. The analogy I always tell people is the difference between a Ferrari and a Prius. All right, Ferrari, they look nice, they're sexy, but they guzzle gas. Prius, not exactly good looking, but fantastic on gas. However, though, when you buy them, you accept them as a whole. It's part of the whole product, and then you learn to fall in love with that. And so, it's just a matter of how you see those things.
And of course, Michael and I are almost always on the same page. He was asking you a similar question to the one I wanted. And that's what I find so interesting, because I know where you guys met. We're going to get into that in a moment, which you're typically around, and again, I'm going to use this in quotes for the people not watching this, the people that are listening, highly successful men, meaning people with, let's say success, let's speak in generalities, means financially successful, right? So I think that is so interesting to hear, is that the men that you're working with, these oftentimes are millionaires or way more, and you're working with them from the level of self-acceptance, because so many of us listen to this, and I can put myself 5-10 years ago in this category, and I'm sure Michael can too, and probably you too, Pablo, where I would have thought, if I were just wealthy and successful, then every woman would want to date me. And I bet that that's what so many men have hang-ups over. Just like, I'm not going to try to understand women, right? I'm not mansplaining at all. But I'm sure women think, if I were only this, whatever that quote is, successful in whatever terms they want to use, then I would find the man or the woman, whatever, that I want to be with. And so I find that super interesting. And, when you find those men, these very highly financially successful men, is it just that to them? You say, you have to understand and accept yourself first. You're talking about that, and to see, how does that work? Because I think that's so intriguing to me, because we all say that, right? I mean, I don't know, Michael, don't we all think, like,
Totally.
if only I were a millionaire, if only I had 10 million, then anybody and everybody would want to date me then. Do you hear that a lot? And then how does that conversation go for you, Pablo?
Yeah, that's how it starts off. And that's eventually how all the conversation starts off. If I were this, if I were more confident, if I was taller, leaner, shorter, richer, all the above. And in that moment, I say okay, because that's their reality. That's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to dismiss someone's reality. Whatever their experience, it's right. Whether or not you can see other ways, whatever their experience, it's right. So